Thank you. It's truly an honor and privilege to be here to tell my story to Vietnam veterans. I grew up reading Vietnam books and was always fascinated with the jungle warfare, and more importantly, and most importantly, my generation is always, and future generations and all generations of warriors to come will always be indebted and thankful to you guys for what you all have done for our coming home and for us being treated the way we've been treated, not only in the airports, but just just in society in general. Our transitions and things like that, every success that we've had is always going to be indebted to the Vietnam veteran. With that said, here's a little bit about me and my story. On 9/11, I was a senior at Centennial High School in Roswell, Georgia, and I walked into my second period criminal justice class and watched the second Twin Tower fall. As I'm sitting there processing what's going on, my teacher looked out to the classroom and said, "How many of y'all are 18 years old?" I rose my hand. I was the only one in the class actually that was 18 years of age, and he looked directly at me and said, "We are at war." For the rest of the day, I went to class and soaked that in and decided I was going to do something about that. So I went straight home and I told my mom I'm joining the Marine Corps. She looked at me and she said, "I'm okay with that, but I'd rather you go to college first." Unlike most adolescent decisions I made, I actually listened to my mother and attended the University of Alabama. Started out in ROTC there, did that for a little while, and then got soaked into the business school there and majoring in finance. And then come my senior year, like Pat said, I was watching ESPN and the Pat Tillman story came on, and I just couldn't believe that someone would give up $10 million to live the American dream to go fight for our country. And then a few days later, after staying up all night studying for a finance test, I walked down to get some coffee at the local coffee shop off University Boulevard called Badass Coffee. As I'm waiting for my coffee, I'm watching the news in the background of an Iraq city I've never heard of with guns and bombs going off. And it was right then and there that I knew that I've got to do something. I've got to answer this calling. I just felt compelled to do something. So I went and took my finance test and then went immediately to the Army recruiting station and walked right in and asked for the hardest thing they've got. The recruiter looked at me and said, "We've got an Army Ranger contract." And I said, "Great, sign me up." Must have been that badass coffee. Do not go there if you do not want to go back in the Army, you know what I mean? So next morning I put all my books in my backpack and I ran to class. It changed my life, and a few months later, I graduated on August 12th, and on August 23rd, I was in boot camp and had a whole bunch of drill sergeants yelling at me, and I realized my mom was right. This is a bad idea. Went through boot camp, and then went to airborne school, and then started the Ranger Indoctrination Program to get in the 75th Ranger Regiment with over 200 candidates. We graduated 63, and I graduated with the Physical Fitness Award. They said, "You can choose your place of duty," and I said, "Hunter Army Airfield, Savannah, Georgia, beaches, this is going to be great. I'm ready." Flip-flops, and I show up, and on my 23rd birthday, they assigned me to the suicide squad. Everybody had been shot. The squad had been shot in the back, both team leaders shot, one in the knee and femoral artery. And I said, "Oh, okay." And they said, "By the way, we're deploying to Iraq in 2 months." I said, "Okay, we're not going to the beach." Just like these stories of what I was watching here in Vietnam, showed up to Iraq in April of 2007, and Balad, Iraq was being mortared, and we're running around trying to get ammo to get over to Baghdad, and realized really quickly that this is war. We'd do that 3 times in Iraq, and then two to Afghanistan. And on my 5th and final deployment, I was the senior team leader for 1st Ranger Battalion when we identified the number 3 most wanted terrorist. By this time, I'd been on over 400 direct action raids, jumped out of helicopters, airplanes, invaded terrorist training camps in Iraq and Syria and in Afghanistan, went on hostage rescue missions for British MI6 agents held hostage. We had seen it, we had been there, and we had done it all. But on this particular night, Saeed Shah, the number 3 most wanted terrorist, was located in the Pech River Valley, where the mountain peaks pushed 10,000 feet. And just like that guy on the Vietnam movie said, it was actually beautiful. You didn't understand why we were fighting there. This beautiful Pech River ripping through this valley, and it was something to be seen. But what was more interesting about this tribe in the Pech River Valley that Saeed Shah led was it was the Nuristan tribe. This tribe was a subsect of the Taliban, and they were accredited for defeating the Russians in the 80s and Alexander the Great in 400 BC. This tribe only knew how to fight. They were accredited for wounding and killing approximately a dozen coalition forces from the 101st Airborne during the year of 2010. Alongside the Pech River in the Pech River Valley was a road called MSR Road Island, and it was the main thoroughfare for logistics coming out of Pakistan that fed all the coalition forces the supplies needed to fight the war. So the urgency and the sense of purpose for this mission was there. We were based out of Jalalabad, Afghanistan, the same area where the movie Zero Dark 30, where the bin Laden raid took place. There was myself as the primary assault team leader, another Ranger squad leading secondary assault, and a few Navy SEALs running the support by fire element with snipers. We rehearsed our plan. This is the same area as Marcus Luttrell's book turned movie, Lone Survivor. We read the after-action reviews of these missions. And what was interesting, not only is the tribal fighting and tactics and techniques very proficient, but the weather systems were a huge issue. The mountain peaks were so high that the cloud cover could roll in pretty quickly in this stretch of mountains there, and that really did a huge disservice to the way that the direct action raids were conducted. It would sometimes take the support element from the ISR, predators, and drones and things like this above providing our cover. So we had to take all this into consideration. And on the night of August 17th, 2010, the mission was a go, and we flew into a little outpost in the Pech River Valley called Cop, Michigan. It was where the 101st was at, and we quickly realized how battered and beat up these guys were. Everywhere you could travel, you could only go through tunnel systems, and at night you couldn't use your lights. It was very apparent that that they were being held down and pinned down due to this tribe. As I walked through the chow hall, I noticed a young guy that night that was crying. He had lost a friend the day prior, and so everything was kind of leading up as to why we're there. We were all seniors, enlisted guys with multiple missions, like I mentioned, and everything seemed to be right on the night of August 18th, the following night. As we exfilled Cop, Michigan, we had a 5-kilometer infiltration walk up to the Shamoon village within the Pech River Valley, and all seemed to be going fine. Didn't seem to be interrupting any of the lookouts or the personal security detachment that was always traveling with Saeed Shah. We hit a few compounds on the way to where his house ultimately was. They were identified as known areas of insurgents, but he wasn't there, and we utilized battle interrogation at that moment to finally pinpoint the house where he was located. As I approached this somewhat house, the engineering, architecture, construction within Afghanistan was nothing but a bunch of mud walls. It didn't really always make too much sense, but you could pretty much see that he was at a 2-story or 3-story home here in the Shamoon village. To get the most muzzles into the house, I took my team onto a 2nd-story rooftop while a secondary assault set their team in on the bottom floor. While we were doing this simultaneously, the SEAL element was setting in their support by fire with the snipers, and the drones were flying above, and all seemed to be going to plan. The last radio call we heard was that ISR was on station, but what we didn't know is that was 5 minutes ago, and cloud cover came in. So as I'm climbing up on top of this 2nd-story rooftop with my team in trail, the cloud cover rolled in, and at that about immediate time, the last that this ISR footage saw was no one was on top of that roof. Well, while we were setting in on the 2nd-story rooftop, on the 3rd-story rooftop, Saeed Shah and his personal security detachment team were setting in place as well. Simultaneously, secondary assault setting in below us. There were 3 doors on this second-story cupola rooftop. One door seemed to be the one that was the most advantageous to get into the house. So me, followed by my team, Chris Wright, Ethan Grombeck, Dan Escobar, and squad leader Trevor Tao, were all positioned. It's kind of like a horse race or a dog race where we're all being held back, full of adrenaline, giving our ground force commander the go that we're ready to rock. Simultaneously, everybody else did the same, and then it was just a matter of 3, 2, 1, go, and we kicked that door down, and I went straight into that prayer room first, as fast as I had ever done, and then there was nobody in there. There was just a rug, and it was a prayer room. Like we had trained so many times, I called out short room, short room. This let everybody know that nobody's in here. We need to get back out, and there's no exit. We need to get back out on this rooftop and go make entrance into one of these other doors on this cupola rooftop here. So as we exfilled out of the room in fashion that we came in, it allowed the junior guys within the team out the door first. As they led around this corner of this rooftop, I came out myself, and as I peered around this corner of the room, something started falling out of the sky. Before I could truly identify what it was accompanied by a barrage of AK-47 fire. Immediately at that moment, that thing falling out of the sky blew up right in front of our faces, along with about 4 or 5 other grenades. It was not like anything that you had ever prepared or witnessed. At that exact moment, Chris was shot twice in the shoulder. He was screaming out, "I'm hit, I'm hit." It seemed like it was lasting an eternity, but it was really only a matter of seconds, and there was that inner struggle of wanting to help your buddy, but not truly able to really see through the fog of what's happening. We were able to process and regain our kind of composure and get back in the fight. Me and Dan Escobar and another guy noticed that there was a muzzle flash coming right above us, only about 5 feet above us, through like this wooden wall that was somewhat of a fortified fighting position. The 3 of us eliminated the first combatant, and we continued to all shoot into this wooden wall that was above us. I could still hear Chris screaming out, "I'm hit, I'm hit." And it didn't seem as though we were being shot. I could hear a whole bunch of rounds going off and grenades still going off, and that was the secondary assault coming up through the inside of the house. At that moment, the squad leader in the secondary assault got his arm shot off, and a few other team leaders were blown up from grenades with shrapnel all over them, concussing them and basically putting them out of the fight. As I ran up to grab Chris, I turn him over and I start dragging him. Adrenaline's going like crazy. At that exact time, Ethan Grombeck and Dan Escobar came to Chris's aid as well, and we're dragging him back on this rooftop. And he was dead weight. It felt like I was pulling 400 pounds. He was probably only around 200 pounds with fully loaded out in gear. And as we're coming around this corner to get back into that first door we entered, I could see rounds impacting at our feet below us. And I looked at Dan briefly and I said, "Shit, are we getting shot at again?" And he was like, "Yes, like we got to, just, what are we going to, do something about it?" So I'm like, "All right, get Chris back in that room." It was to our luck that we had a little overhang that came over top of this second-story roof cupola that provided us cover that wasn't planned, that kept us alive for that little moment there. As I told Escobar and Ethan to get Chris in that room, I kind of figured that this was going to be it. He had the drop on us, but I was going to see what I could do. Quickly revealed myself from underneath that ledge and came face to face with a muzzle flash that somehow did not shoot me, and I was able to eliminate that threat right above me. I continued to shoot and then ran up and grabbed onto this ledge and got my M4 over onto the top of that roof and shot until I had no more rounds left. And then I dropped back down, and the adrenaline was so high, I thought like anything else, I'd put a new mag in my M4 like we had trained so many times, but my adrenaline was so high I kept on missing the mag well. It was then that you kind of realized we might make it out of here. And so I ran into what was now the casualty collection point, and Dan was taking Chris's clothes off, to kind of reveal his wounds. There was only one exit wound that we saw, and it was under his armpit, about the size of a golf ball, and the two entrance wounds were cauterized as they entered his skin, so there was no real blood coming out of those. Ran over and checked on Gronbeck, and that's when he showed me that his squad automatic weapon was shot in the operating rod. So when he tried to return fire, our most lethal weapon was deadlined. As that open bolt fed weapon, the piston was jammed in the operating rod. The operating rod was jammed in the gas tube. So I ran over and grabbed Chris's M4 and gave it to Gronbeck, and I put him on security at a window, and I said, basically, you know what to do. If anybody comes out of that room, take them out. We were still getting shot at by a bunch of random tracers and random things from houses around within the village that we weren't ever really able to locate, but we felt like it was secure enough, so we had the medics come up, and we performed 9 needle decompressions on Chris. His chest started to look like some sort of one of these dolls where they have the pins in them and things. And I didn't really know what to say. It was kind of like when he was screaming out, I'm hit, and not knowing what to do. I just thought I would do like anybody else would do. And I looked at him and I grabbed his hand and I said, you're going to be okay. And he said, shut up, I'm dying. Not so like that. There was a few other curse words involved. And I said, roger that. That was it. We had casevac'd him. We had him fly, sent out in a casevac bird. And, just like the movies in a way, he said, tell my mom. He was rambling about something, but he would later die in surgery. We accomplished the mission. We killed the number 3 most wanted terrorist, but we lost a great American. And on that 5-kilometer exfil out of Shamoon Village back to Cop, Michigan, I thought to myself, what am I going to do about this? Am I going to stay in the Army, or am I going to get out? I didn't really know. A lot of me wanted to just stay in the Army and try to kill as many more terrorists as I could to kind of get revenge of some sort. But I did know one thing after that exfil back to Cop, Michigan, that I was going to make sure that nobody ever forgot the name Christopher Shane Wright. I think it's easy for most of us to get up and tell our story, but what I really want to get across, or what my whole purpose is about this whole telling my story, is that the name Christopher Shane Wright does not die in vain. And it really wasn't apparent to how I was going to do that until I ended up getting out of the Army right then after that deployment. And I came home in 2010 for Christmas, and my mom noticed that I had a whole lot going on, and she said, I'm going to get you a journal. She got me a journal for Christmas, and I said, Mom, Rangers do not write in journals. Once again, she is right. That lady is always right. Regarding the ambassador at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, I took that journal and I wrote down everything. And I would later put that journal away until I was asked by a lot of people to turn it into a book. And that's what I did. I turned it into the book titled A Night in the Pech Valley and dedicated it to Chris. And it not only helped heal myself, but it helped heal quite a number of people involved on this mission. And Chris's parents said that this was the best thing they had ever read to help them learn more about their son. That's all I've got to say today, and literally, I just want to thank you guys for having me here. Thank you, Pat, for inviting me, and I've got some books in the back if anybody's interested in checking any of them out. Thank you. Oh, yeah.